Hi, Avi.
All right. How's everyone doing?
Ah, um,
Okay, we're in Parshat Bo, um, and we're quickly progressing through the story of Pesach, the story of leaving Mitzrayim. Parshat Bo, that the gematria of Bo is 3. That's how we remember that it contains the final 3 of the plagues, the final 3 makot. Um, and do you guys see me or am I blank?
No, you're dark.
Yeah, why did I go
you're
dark?
you're opaque.
I'm opaque.
You
Okay, I don't know why that is. Video.
still look fine, really.
Okay,
There you are.
there I
We
am.
see you.
All right,
Same.
we'll see how long that lasts. Okay, so I wanted to tonight focus in on the ninth of the Makot, the ninth plague, which is the plague of Choshech, of darkness. Right, so we begin source 1. Am I zoomed in enough?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Vayomer Hashem
Yeah.
el Moshe, Netei yadcha al hashamayim v'choshech al eretz Mitzrayim v'yamesh choshech. God says to Moshe, stretch your hand towards the heavens, and there will be darkness on the land of Egypt, v'yamesh choshech. It will be palpable. The darkness will be palpable. Vayet Moshe et yado al hashamayim v'yichoshech hafeilah b'chol eretz Mitzrayim shloshet yamim. Moshe stretches his hand towards the heavens, and there was Choshech afela, darkness, thick darkness, they translate it here, in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. Lo ra'u ish et achiv, lo kamu ish mitachtav, shloshet yamim, ulechol b'nei Yisrael haya or b'moshvotam. No one saw anyone else, and they did not get up, they did not rise for 3 days, and for all of the Jewish people there was light in their dwellings. So it's a pretty terrifying description of this darkness. Um, I've never done it, and I'm not sure how I would do if I had the opportunity. But I don't think it's only in Israel, but I've heard about it in Israel. There's a restaurant, um, which I should know the name of, but I don't, which is, as I understand, run completely by blind people. And the dining
Ooh.
experience is that it is complete pitch dark in the restaurant. I think they
Oh,
make you wear a blindfold as well. And you have to experience and navigate the meal in complete darkness. And that's what I think of when I read this description of
oh.
Choshech. For those of us who are blessed to be able to see, um, I think I would freak out if someone took me to that restaurant. I don't know.
I think
Um,
my son went to that restaurant when he was in Israel.
yeah, yeah.
There's also a blind museum in Israel.
That's
Uh-huh.
so
So you
that's
can
what I was
sit
gonna say, yeah.
Oh,
and you go
okay.
through it as a blind person.
Yeah, yeah.
And at
Yeah.
the
So,
end of the tour, they bring you into the diner, right? That's the part, is that the final part of the tour is that they bring you into their restaurant and you have to
uh-huh.
order in the
Yeah.
complete darkness
Wow.
and while being blind. And I'll
Wow.
add, just on like a personal like pat on the back, when I went on the tour at the Blind Museum, our tour guide said to me, "Wow, you'd be a really good blind person."
Wow.
So I took that as a compliment.
So some of you remember Ruth Sager, who was in our shul and passed away a couple
Sure.
years ago, and she was blind. I had a very powerful conversation with her as she was sick towards the end, and she had the opposite feeling. She told me she doesn't, wherever she's going next, Olam Haba, the world to come, heaven, whatever it is, she said she doesn't want to see. She doesn't know what that would be like. So that
Oh,
was very
wow.
Wow.
powerful. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. So with that as an introduction, the question that I really want to focus on is said by Rabbi Sachs, but it's, I think, a question that if we think about it, should be an obvious question, which is that we understand the Makos, the plagues, are a progression from, okay, so right, as he writes, Dam, the plague of blood, was a little inconvenient. But even the Torah tells us that while the Nile turned to blood, they were able to dig, if they dug a hole a couple feet away, then they would get clean, fresh water. It's Bardea, the frogs, also annoying. No one wants to have frogs hopping all around, but we survived cicadas in Baltimore, and they survived frogs in Egypt, right? And so it's a little surprising that the ninth, the penultimate, and many say that really the Mako should be 9+1. That the Makat Becharot, the slaying of the firstborn, is its own category, so that the ninth, the penultimate plague, should be darkness, which we all, again, we all make our way through the night. We've all been in situations with loss of power, whatever. It doesn't seem like this is such a horrible thing, right? So that's the basic question: is what makes darkness such a severe punishment that it merits to be the ninth of the plagues? That's the basic question for tonight. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so the first explanation is that maybe the suffering or the pain or whatever the punishment of darkness wasn't so severe. But as we have, and this is just one example of many throughout the first chunk of Sefer Shemot, right? Hashem tells Moshe, or tells Bnei Yisrael, Avarti b'Eretz Mitzrayim b'layla hazeh. This is referring to Makat B'chavot, the slaying of the firstborn. God says, I will pass through Egypt on this night. V'keti kol b'chor b'Eretz Mitzrayim. I will strike every firstborn in the land of Egypt. V'b'chor adam v'ad b'chor behema. From the firstborn of humans to the firstborn of animals. V'chol Elohei Mitzrayim esesh shvatim. And I will bring judgment against all the gods of Egypt. So the first explanation is that Choshech also is a carrying out of judgment against the Egyptian gods, against the Egyptian deity. So again, many sources that point to this. I'll just bring Rabbi Sachs because it was easy. The significance of the ninth plague is obvious. The greatest god in the Egyptian pantheon was Ra, or Re, I guess it would be pronounced, the sun god. The name of Paro, often associated with the Exodus, Ramses II, means Meses, son of, as in Ra, the god of the sun. Son of the god of the sun, right? Egypt, so its people believed, was ruled by the sun. Its human ruler, or Paro, was semi-divine, the child of the sun god. The beginning of time, according to Egyptian myth, the sun god ruled with Nun, the primeval waters. Eventually, there were many deities. Ra then created human beings from his tears. Seeing, however, that they were deceitful, he sent the goddess Hathor to destroy them. Only a few survived. The plague of darkness was not a mofate, but an oath, a sign. The obliteration of the sun signaled that there was a power greater than Ra. Yet what the plague represented was less the power of God over the sun, but the rejection by God of a civilization that turned one man, Paro, into an absolute ruler with the ability to enslave other human beings, and a culture that could tolerate the murder of children, because that is what Ra himself did. Okay, so whatever the details and nuances are, that basically darkness is a polemic or a direct attack against Egyptian God, against Ra, against the sun god. And so that darkness, again, maybe it is a terrible suffering, maybe it's not. But even if it's not a terrible human suffering, the theological, philosophical message is a very powerful one. And so if the Makos are meant to be, among the many goals of the Makos is to demonstrate Hashem as the ultimate God and the sovereign over the entire world, and the falsity of the Egyptian religion and their gods. So that's what this achieves. That's the first explanation of why it has such a prominent place when we might have expected it to not be a plague at all, or to certainly be one of the earlier plagues. Any questions or thoughts
Rabbi?
on that? Yeah.
It just so happens that in the last 2 days, Rabbi Lisman has been giving us some ideas that are quite, I think, relevant to this. And he quotes the passages from the prophets, two prophets and two Tehillim, which speak of they have eyes, but they can't see. They have ears, but they can't hear.
Right.
Okay. Which is kind of the situation, it seems, that the Egyptian people are in. And so, okay. But the prophets, like, I'm going to start with the Tehillim. There are two Tehillim that he quoted from, and it's clear that it's a reference to the idols, the gods of the nations. They see, but they have eyes, but they can't see, and they have ears, but they can't hear. But the prophets Jeremiah and Ezekiel apply it to the Jewish people. And that idea will come back around, I know, later in your notes. But I just was thinking that here are these people who are Egyptian people who are frozen like idols in stone, and they can't see and they can't hear.
Yeah.
So maybe that's another dimension to the judgment upon what's going on. I just thought that was so interesting.
Okay, that definitely fits in. A second school of thought, which we're going to work a little bit chronologically backwards, but we'll start with the Sforno. The Sforno says, by Yamesh Choshech, that it was palpable, or it was a tangible darkness. Vayasir et hachoshech hativi shel laila. It removes, or it will remove, right? This is talking at before the plague actually happens. The normal, natural darkness that we call nights. Ki omnam choshech halayla hu avir muchan lekabel haor. Normal nighttime darkness is an air or an atmosphere, an environment, which is capable and ready to receive light, right? You turn on the light outside the house, and then you can see what's going on outside the house. You're driving on the highway, and right, there's many stretches in Maryland don't have street lights, but there's a light, and you can see what's happening. This is not that type of air. It's not that type of environment. Right? So the normal darkness is simply the absence of light. Omnam zeh hachoshech ye aror avir bilti muchan lekabel haor lerov avav. This darkness was not capable of receiving light, of illuminating. What we might call it a vacuum, or a dark hole, a black hole. Lo yipol alav ha'eder ha'or bioto bioti muchan elav. Right. It wasn't simply the absence of light, but this was the inability to be enlightened, the inability to receive light. This was a vacuum. This was pure darkness. Right. This was it wasn't a natural darkness that we think of. The Ramban says similarly, Tam lo ra'u ish et achiv, right? So it says that when the plague descended, that no person was able to see their fellow. Lo kamu ish mitachtav, and no one arose from their place. Ki lo haya choshech hazeh afisat or hashemesh shabashim sham vaya kmo laila. Again, just like the Sforno, this darkness wasn't simply the absence of light, as when the sun sets, but it was a thick or a dark darkness. Klomar, Eid av me'od sheyarad min hashamayim. He describes it as a very thick mist which descended from heaven. Ki al kein amar netei et yadcha al hashamayim, and that's why God says to Moshe, point your hand towards the heavens in order to bring this darkness about. Lorid misham chashicha gdola nofelet aleim, in order to bring down from heavens this abnormal, this amazing darkness. Hayta mechaba kol ner. It extinguished every flame. Kasher b'chol hachafirot hamukot u'b'chol mekomot hachoshech hatzum lo yitkayim haner. Just like if you go really, really deep down into a cave, there is no, you can't light a fire. V'chol avrim beharei choshech lo yamod lahem sham haner lo eish klal. Right? If you're passing through these areas in the world, then there is no, you can't even light a flame. And that's why it says they couldn't see each other, they couldn't get up from where they were. Right? If this weren't the case, they would have used candles, you would have used torches, they would have been able to illuminate the darkness. And this is maybe this is one of the sukkim from Tehillim that Rabbi Lipson was referring to, Anne. Shalach choshech vayachshich. God sent down darkness, and it was dark. Shiruach choshech. It was a sent, a special delivery type of darkness. Lo afisat or hayom bilvad, not simply the absence of daylight. Itachin shehaya eid av meod murgash hayabo kemo mamash. And so it makes sense, right? It seems logical in that sense that it was really a palpable, tangible, thick mist, thick something that you could feel. And so they're saying that this was not a natural, the natural regular darkness that we experience, but it was something supernatural, something beyond the norm. And again, we're working chronologically backwards, but I think that they're building on each other. The Shemot Rabbah takes it maybe a step further. Vayat Moshe et yado al hashamayim v'choshech afela. Moshe stretches his hand towards heaven, and there was this thick, palpable darkness. Where did this darkness come from? Rabbi Yehuda of Rabbi Nechemiah. So there's two opinions, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemiah. Rabbi Yehuda omer mechoshech shomala. Yehuda says it was coming from darkness of up above. Shene'amar yashet choshech sitro svivato sukato. As it says that there is darkness in God's hidden place surrounding his sukkah, his abode. However, we're going to translate that. Rabbi Nechemiah omer mechoshech shal Gehenom. Rabbi Nechemiah says it was the darkness of Gehenom, which will translate as hell, the netherworld. Shene'amar Eretz ifatak mo ofel atomavit lo sijuram. As it says, the day he descended to the grave, I caused where the light is like darkness, and the day he descended to his grave, I caused the deep to mourn and cover itself for him. Sorry, I was reading the wrong verse in translation. As it says, the land of darkness like blackness, the shadow of death and disorder, where the light is like darkness. Okay. Woe to the home whose windows open out into darkness. And then it quotes the verse from Eov, Ofer or Shalamito Choshech. Okay. It was, again, not natural darkness that we experience if we were to step outside right now and turn out the lights on a cloudy night without stars or moon, but it was coming from heavens. It was coming from Gehenna, again, however we understand what Gehenna is, but it was some abnormal, special type of darkness that had this effect on the Egyptians. Any questions on this explanation of it?
I think that for somebody that is tortured in one room with nobody else for a long time, they don't see anything. They can't see anything. So it's the kind of darkness. What can go through their minds? Yeah. What are they thinking? It's torture.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as we're hearing some descriptions of what the recently released hostages went through, that resonates. That's exactly what happened to them. Okay,
I just want to interject then as well. So the whole premise of Rabbi Sachs's question was, does this fit? before Makat Bechorot and after
You got it. You got it.
Shrid Barad Arba.
Arba,
Yeah,
which is,
the locusts.
yeah,
Right. So does this fit between like all the rest of the no food
right.
and your firstborn are going to be killed, and then there's like you can't see, you can't move, there's no light, and you're just stuck in the dark alone. I
Yeah,
guess that's what it's saying. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Right. And if we're, again, however we understand this Gehenna, but that, that could be a lead-in to Makat Bechorot, to actual death, is this feeling of death, or this place where the dead go. Okay, Rashi points us in a slightly different direction. Vahi choshech afela shloshet yamim. There was this thick, palpable darkness for 3 days. Choshech shel ofel, again, darkness of dark, darkness of gloom. Shlo ra'u ish et achiv otan gimel yamin. No one saw each other for those 3 days. V'od shloshet yamim acherim choshech mechupal al zeh. And then an additional 3 days, there was even a more intense darkness. Shlo kamu ish mitachtav, where no one was able to move from what position they were in. Yoshev ein yachol la'amod, va'omed ein yachol yeshev. If someone was sitting, they couldn't stand up, and if they were standing, they couldn't sit down. Lama hevi alehem choshech. Why did God bring darkness upon them? Shahayu b'Yisrael b'oto ador risha'im v'lo hayu rotzim matzeit. Because among the Jews, among Bnei Israel, there were risha'im, there were wicked people. They didn't want to leave. They wanted to remain in Egypt. Umetu bishloshet yemei afela. They died during these days of darkness. Why? Kidei shelo yiru Mitzrayim b'mapalatam, so that the Egyptians wouldn't see their demise. V'yomru afim lokim kamonu, and say, whatever's happening, right? The Jews are being punished just like us, so it's not so bad, right? There's no reason to let them go. We should remain our slaves because everyone's suffering equally. V'od, and furthermore, shechipsu Yisrael varuk et klehem. The Jews, right during this time, searched and found the Egyptians' wealth, their treasures. As the Jews were leaving, the Torah tells us that they demanded payment for their years of servitude. The Egyptians would say, "We don't have anything to pay you. We don't have anything to give you." Omerlo ani ra'itiv b'veitecha makom plonihi. So then the Jews could say back, "Nope, I know exactly where you're hiding it. I know where your safe spot is. I know where the treasure is being hidden. So therefore, give it to me." Right. So Rashi says that whether whether that addresses Rabbi Sachs's question directly, but he says that the point of Choshech at this point really wasn't so much to punish the Egyptians as it was to provide cover for God to punish the Jews that were deserving of punishment. That there was a number, right? We read in Parshat B'Shalach, "V'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael." The Jews left literally means chamushim, armed, but there's the Medrash that says that means no, one, like chamesh, 1/5. Only 1/5 of Bnei Israel left. Right, that means that 1/5 of them was 600,000. So someone else do the math, right? What's
Isn't it 5 times 6 or something? I don't know.
Yeah, so 3 million. So that means 3 million or so didn't make it.
Right. Well, 2.4, I guess.
Yeah,
or
so that's so yeah,
Wow.
that's a lot of Jews to die, if we take that literally.
Yeah, the Egyptians might notice also after the
Yeah,
darkness.
I once asked that question in Dvar Torah. How could it be if so many Jews didn't make it? And so the answer I gave is that that's one of the things when someone is suffering, you're not sensitive to the suffering of others. So the Egyptians were so caught up in what was going on with them that they didn't even notice. That's an interesting side note. But anyway, so Rashi says that the main point of darkness here was for the Jews, either so that those Jews deserving of punishment could be punished without there being a further, we'll call it a Chilul Hashem, desecration of God's name, that the Egyptians would see that so many Jews were being punished and dying, or it was an opportunity for the Jews to spy out where the Egyptian treasure was held. we could ask the question, that could have been done earlier on in the process. Why specifically now? I'm not sure. Maybe God was giving Bnei Yisrael as much time as possible to do tshuva or to come to their senses. Okay, and so the next source, the Medrash, just elaborates on this Rashi. Choshech lama hivi alehen, yitbarach shemo shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. Why did God bring darkness upon the Egyptians? She'ein lefanav maso panim v'hu choker lev v'v'chein klayot lefi shayu boshim v'Yisrael shaya lahen patronin min hamitzrim v'ayu lahem sham eser v'chavod sham osher v'chavod v'ayu otzim latzeit. Right. So he says that it was maybe harken back to what we spoke about last week, that there were certain Jews who weren't enslaved and who, whether they were the officers or some other class, but they had wealth, they were comfortable in Egypt, they didn't want to leave. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, im avi aleihem makah b'farhesia v'yamutu yamu mitzvim kashem shavar aleinu kach avar aleihem. God says, if I punish them in public so that the Egyptians see, the Egyptians will say, just like God punished us, he's punishing them. Therefore, God brought darkness for 3 days over the Egyptians. So that the Jews who survived could bury their relatives who were killed, and the Egyptians wouldn't know of it. Okay, that's a third explanation for why this darkness. We're now going to transition a bit to some more Hasidic, we'll call it more spiritual reflections. Oh, sorry, hand up. Yes.
I just wanted to reflect on that it seems that like you said over here, this isn't the line Yomiro Mitzrim Kashem Shavar Leinu Kachavar Lehen, right, could be transgressing, right? Like we were punished because of a sin that we did, but at this point, that's not it, right? According to the Midrash, right? Like this is actually not about whether or not something was done wrong. For the Israelites, it was, but not for the Egyptians. So there had to be, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. If they were to see the Jews killed, that could be. That could be. So maybe Choshech is only a plague for the Jews. Interesting. Okay, so I have a few sources here that I wasn't. These were in my files, and I couldn't hunt down who the author of some of these next works are. Eshkol Ma'amarim. I don't know who this is. I honestly don't know how I got it in my files, but I thought he said something nice. Vahi choshech afela, v'lo ra'u ish et achiv. There was this palpable thick darkness. No one saw each other. Kishadam eino ro'eh et hazolet, o eino rotze liroto, chashicha bo'olam. When a person does not see the other, or does not want to see him, there is darkness in the world. I don't think this means literally. I think this means more on a spiritual sense, right? When we say, I identify with you, I see you, I empathize with you. So when a person is not able or not willing to recognize the other, that's the definition of darkness in the world. And that's a theme that continues in the next two sources. The Chidushei Harim, the first Gera Rebbe, the grandfather of the Sfas Emes. I think I quoted him this past Shabbos also. Lo ra'u ish et achiv, lo kamu ish mitachtav. Hachoshech hayoter gadol, hu kishe'ein ish ro'eh et re'ehu. The greatest darkness is when a person does not see his fellow. Ve'eno mishtatef b'tsa'ar hazolet. And he doesn't share in the suffering. He doesn't empathize with someone else's pain. Lo ra'u ish et achiv, בתוצאתו של דבר, כשאין מרגישים בצערו של חברו, הרגש נעשה קהה ומשותק. They didn't see one another, and the result of this is that when they don't feel the pain of someone else, then all senses are numbed. Lo kamu ish mitachtav, ein lo tekuma, They didn't get up from their position. There is no way to get up, right? This is the absolute lowest. So in a spiritual sense, the physical suffering may not be as great as we would have necessarily expected for the ninth plague in this progression, but in a spiritual sense, it's the greatest punishment there could be, to not be able to empathize and identify and connect with someone else. Okay, and again, another source I don't know the author of, I apologize, or Hameir. Faresh HaKatuv, Mahu Choshech La'afela. So the Torah tells us, what is this darkness? Lo ra'u ish et achiv, they didn't see one another. Ra'u mashma'o lashon chashivut. Right, so he, just like we use the phrase in nowadays, I see you, to mean I empathize with you, identify with you, I feel you, right? They didn't even consider one another. They didn't have any awareness of one another. As we say, right? I see your words. You don't see the words, but it means that you understand. Right? Okay. וזהו לא ראו איש את אחיו, ירצה ולא חשבו בליבם איש את אחיו, ללמוד ממעשיהם הטובים. They didn't consider in their hearts someone else in order to learn from their good traits, from their good deeds. Ve'adarabba, mamtsiim tamid chesronot v'kilon v'dofi. Not only were they not looking to learn and to grow from one another, but they were specifically looking for the shortcomings and the deficiencies and what everyone was lacking. Mi'apim aseh atzmam. They only beautified or grandized their own actions. And that's why they were walking in darkness, below or, without light. Below or lahem leilech tamid mimadriga lemadriga. They weren't able to go up from one level to the next. Zehu lo kamu ish mitachtav, and that's the significance of the Torah telling us that they didn't get up from where they were. Ki im hema tamid b'madriga echad. They were only at one level. They were only static. They weren't able to move. They weren't dynamic. They weren't looking to grow, to increase. And a Jew has to always be a holech. We've spoken about this in previous shiurim. That one of the trademarks of Avram Avinu, Lech Lecha, right, that he gives us the attribute of being a holech, of being someone who's always on the move. Again, doesn't necessarily mean a wandering Jew or a person without a home, but it means someone who's always looking to improve themselves, to go up, to ascend. That's the key trait. And so, if you're not willing, you're not able to learn and internalize and be sensitive to someone else, so you're going to be in this static state of not growing yourself. So I thought that was this whole train of thought is very beautiful. There's a whole debate. Are any of these Hasidic readings of anything pshat? In some way, I think they're very much pshat, very much the absolute clear, plain sense of what the Torah is telling us. On the other hand, certainly not a literal read. Okay. Final idea about the significance of the darkness, also in the world of Chassidus. We're going to start with the Baal Shem Tov and then move to Rabbi Nachman. So the Baal Shem Tov comments on Parshat Noach. When God tells Noach to make the ark, to make the teva, he says, Tzohar ta'aseh teva. Make a tzohar for the ark. No one knows what a tzohar is. Rashi tells us, Yesh omrim chalon. Some say it means a window, in order that Noach could open it and let the light in, let the birds out. Yesh omrim evin tovah me'ira lahem. Some say it was some precious stone that gave off light. Right? Noach was in this dark ark. If you've seen the pictures, the models of it, it was basically just a large wooden box. And so they needed a light source, and the light source, what some say, was this precious stone that, right, we've all seen the crystals that glow in the dark. So it was something like that. The Baal Shem Tov takes it in a very different direction, because we know that the Sohar Ta'aseh La Teva, Teva means the ark. The Teva has a second meaning. What else does the word Teva mean?
Word.
Letter.
A word. So the Baal Shem Tov says, Sohar Ta'aseh La Teva, Shetiyah Teva, Sha'adam Midaber B'Torah B'Tfilah Matir. The Teva, the words that a person utters when learning Torah or when in prayer, should be matir, should give off light, should be enlightening. Yesh bechol ot olamot u'nishamot ve'elohut. Every letter has worlds, and spirit, neshamas, and souls, and divinity. Ve'olim mitkashrim u'mityachadim ze im ze. And each letter combines with the letter next to it, and they all form these amazing things. Im Elohut ve'achar kach mityachadim u'mitkashrim yachad otiot v'naseh teva. Right, so through divine inspiration, through divine gift, all the letters come together, and they are adorned, and they form teva. They form a word. Ve'achar kach mityachadim yichudim amitiim be'elohut. And the words bring us to reveal, to understand truth in God. V'tzarich adam lichlol nishmato b'chol b'china v'china mehaniskar ve'az mityachadim kol alamot ke'achad. Okay, so Sohar Ta'aseh La Teva, the Baal Shem Tov says, is that our words, we'll stick to the realm of tefillah, of davening. Our words of davening, our words of prayer, should be enlightening, should give off, should be radiating, should give off this light, which is the embodiment of the neshama, the soul, and the divinity, the God energy that comes together when we properly formulate our words, when we properly say our tefillah. There is a light that's given off.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Rabbi Nachman riffs on this. I will give the English.
Say riffs or rips?
Riffs.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Uvifrat. Misha kvar nimshach achar ve'rot chas v'shalom, v'nimshach achar sitra achar. V'sham mikomo chas v'shalom. So he says, if someone is steeped in sin, someone is what we would call an avarian, a sinner, transgressor. V'him ha-misabevin oto b'chol tzad, and he's literally surrounded by sin and by whatever bad averos he's done. Kasher yo'oreru chol lashuv el Hashem, kashelo me'od litpalel. And finally, he gets some stirring that he wants to do tshuva, he wants to return to Hashem. It's very difficult for such a person to pray, l'daber diburim l'fnei Hashem, and to speak before Hashem. Kihim misabevin oto b'chol tzad. Because he's literally surrounded, he's entrapped by his sins. Since this person cannot properly utter any words, any speech properly to God, lo yuchlu lifgoa hamechitzot hamechasim hamavdilim la'alot lamala. Whatever words he does say has no ability to break through the barriers and the masks and the veils that are causing this separation between him and Hashem and above. Nisharim lemata tachat masachim, and so he remains below under these veils and under these masks. Ad asher yiskeh v'yashuv be'emet, until he does real, proper, true teshuvah. V'yidaber diburim haruyin litkabel b'dechilu u'rechimu me'umka deliba b'hitorarut gadol, and he's able to speak the proper words that will ascend to Hashem. Azai mivaka hadibor hameir et kol hamechitzot hamasachim hamavdilim. Then he has the ability to break through whatever barriers there are. And once he has that breakthrough, then all the words, all the attempts at tefillah that he made previously will eventually rise up with him. So if I just to pause there, that's a really, I know that many people, every person at some point in their life struggles with finding meaning in tefillah. And so this is a really beautiful explanation, really beautiful image that even if you don't have that connection, even if you feel that your tefillot are falling way short, when you finally do have the breakthrough moments, which requires a lot of work, but if and when you finally do have that breakthrough moment, then all the failed prayers of prayer that you had previously uttered do get lifted up with you. Right, so we could understand that in a literal sense, that your prayers will eventually rise up, but also that maybe it's about the process, that you will only be able to have that breakthrough moments if you go through the difficulties of not having it for a period beforehand. Okay, so paragraph 6. How can a person merit this? How can you do this proper tshuva to have the breakthrough, to be able to connect and to have your prayers be effective? Right? So everything is dependent on the truth. To walk in the true path, because God's seal is truth, and that is the basis, the seal of everything. Rosh toch sof. That's the beginning and end. When a person is finally able to get to this level of truth, then he, as it were, becomes enrobed in God's light. Asher chotamo emet, because as we said, God's seal is truth. Then it's where we can say about such a person, God is my light and my salvation. The kivan shashem orlo yucholin sobtachim harbe latzeit mehachoshech vegalut shehu sagor sham. Since God is his light, he can find openings, he can find cracks in the barriers in which he has been locked up. Ki be'emet yesham ptachim harbe. In truth, there always are fissures, there always are openings and cracks. As the rabbis say, this is a very creative read, but the Gemara says, Habali tamei potchino. If someone wants to become impure, potchino, then we give them, the path is there for him. But he's reading it as Habali tamei, one who is impure, one who is tamei, potchino. There are openings for him. There are ways out of the impurity. Yesh lo ptachim harbe. There are many openings. There are many cracks in the barrier. V'kivan shenimsa sham ptachim haya yacholet latzeit. Since there are openings, he has the ability to leave this prison in which he finds himself. Ra kaksil b'choshech holech. But the fool remains in darkness. Lo yirav ptachim latzeit, and is not able to see the openings that are there. Hu asor v'kashor sham, and he remains jailed or tied up there. Lo yitnu lo latzeit, and he cannot leave. Ad asher yizkeh ledaber diburei emet lifnei Hashem, until he merits to speak true words to Hashem. Azai hadiburim meirim. Then the words provide light, Hashem orlo, and God becomes a light for him. Azai patach dvarecha yair yibein ptachim, and then opening up your words will open for even the foolish. Ki hadiburim hameirim hainu diburim emet kanal. Because enlightening words, i.e. words of the truth, heim mar'in lo hapetach, they show a person an opening. V'hainu desiyim mivin pitayim, ki hapitayim hanutnim b'choshech lo yiru latzeit. That's why this verse in Tehillim ends with mevin pitayim, understands or gives understanding to the fools. the fools who are entrenched in darkness, lo yiru letzeit, and they can't leave. Yavinu v'yiru hapetach letzeit me'choshech. Eventually, they will see the opening in order to leave this darkness. K'moshe katuv, li'mor la'asrim tza'u la'asher b'chol. Okay, as it says, tell those who are in prison to leave, la'asher b'choshech yigalu. And those who are in darkness, to be redeemed. Okay, so Rabbi Nachman says very powerfully, very beautifully that the darkness, right? The definition of darkness is when you have this feeling of impenetrable barriers and boundaries between you and God. And that happens when you become immersed in sin, when you've when you've hit the low points. You're not able to see the ways out, even though the ways out are there. And the way to overcome this is by really plugging away, doing proper tshuva, in order to utter true words that will then help you in this metaphor, in this symbolic way, to see the openings, to see the path forward. And if you're able to rise above and find those openings, so then all the seemingly futile things that you had said previously will be accompanying with you, will come along and will emerge into the light with you. So if that, with this understanding of Choshech being the absence of feeling of God is almost the flip side of what we started with Rabbi Sachs is telling us that the significance of Choshech was to disprove or be a polemic against the Egyptian god, right? Here, the Choshech is when a person is not able to themselves connect with Hashem. That's the greatest darkness, according to what we're saying in this approach. That the greatest darkness is when you're not able to connect with Hashem. You're not able to see a way out of the low points in your life. And so that's a plague that certainly maybe that's what the Egyptians were experiencing. That's but as Rabbi Nachman saying that's something that that very much can and does affect us to this very day, and that's the most difficult thing. I'm not going to do the final source here. You're certainly welcome to look at it on your own. Are there any questions or reactions to any of this?
This reminds me of my time at the VA when I had the privilege of working with a very good therapist who worked with what we called people with dual problems. That is, they had an addiction and they were also mentally ill. And many of them in that group were Vietnam vets. And they refused to go to anything like Alcoholics Anonymous because the people there hadn't been through the experience of fighting in Vietnam. They wanted their own group. But this psychologist who led the group was really marvelous. And what he insisted upon and what the others were able to hold each other to was emotional honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really something to see them being, protective in a way of one another. I didn't sense any horrible resentments against one another. And I worked with them for a period of months, even had a chance once to lead the group. But it was such an incredible experience because they could then honestly begin to look back through the layers of so much other emotion to what was really true and what was really important and things like that, because they had been spending their whole lives lying to the people around them, really trying to hide what they were doing or whatever it was, and that's another thing. I mean, the AA itself is a very good example of people trying to achieve emotional honesty and through it emotional maturity.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that in, that the use of the word truth here is, to me, is just filled with all kinds of meanings. And another meaning of it that was offered this morning by the Alter Rebbe as a way to overcome when a person feels themselves trapped is to lift up their eyes to the heavens and see the creator of the world, the Rambam's kind of approach in a way, I guess it is, but still to stop every day and be amazed at something that Hashem has done. Amazed to discover there's a new species. For me, it was a new species of the northern cardinal, which was gold and not red. 2 weeks ago, just got so excited about
an all-star uniform.
It's and Rosh Chodesh is coming, and it's in Psalm 104, the magnificent numbers of your creatures. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And that is a truth, and that is a truth that shows Hashem's truth, and we want to be unified together. That kind of jolt to move us in the right direction.
Yeah, Shakach, beautiful.
I just was going to say that I like the way that it kind of brings together this the Israelites that were punished,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Darkness is something that those who can't comprehend were in darkness, and those who could were in light. Right. So
beautiful. Yeah.
So
Very
it
nice.
pulls that together.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Shakach. Okay, so we started with a basic question tonight, which is what's so difficult? Why is darkness given such a prominent place in the progression of the plagues? We offered a few. I'm not sure, other than the explanation of the Egyptian deity. It's hard to know if any of these are true pshat approaches, but I think we saw. We started with. Saying that this darkness wasn't a normal darkness. It was some sort of vacuum, some sort of dark hole, black hole, absent, not just absence of light, but the inability of light to come in. And then we transitioned to some more Hasidic, we'll call it spiritual Musar approaches that, certainly speak to the suffering that the Egyptians went through, but I think carry very strong relevance and hopefully resonate for us as we lead our lives today. So with that, I'll say Lila Tov. Have a good night, everyone. And
thank you so much, Rabbi, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
It's good almost Chodesh, and hopefully we'll see everyone in Shul on Shabbos and back on Zoom next week. Lila Tov.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.